Jamie Hooper with Remax Crest West Side on West 7th.
Rockstar number 2.
I'm Elizabeth McQueen, and I'm with the Beach Office.
I'm Brian Dolby. I'm with the 16th and McDonald office.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys basically the same questions, which are, where do you farm? How long have you been farming that area? And why do you believe in farming?
Me first, I guess.
Yes?
So I actually farm a little area out in Ladner, if you can believe it. And I started the first week I got in the business. And I believe in it because when the market's gotten tough in the past over the last few decades, it's always been my go-to thing to deliver listings to me
Awesome. So it's paid off.
in droves.
Awesome.
I wouldn't have made it in the business actually the first 5 years if it wasn't for that, because that's where all my business came from the first 5 years.
Okay, say that again, because that's really
I
important.
would, here, Deb will like this, I wouldn't have made it in the business if I hadn't geographic farmed. And the reason I did was because the broker for the office that I went to, the second day in the business, was telling all his new recruits, I did 60 deals my second year in the business. That's what he was telling us. So of course my ears twitched. How'd you do that? He said geographic farming, which was a term I'd never even heard of, and I just went from there.
Awesome. Awesome story. Liz, what about you?
I started doing farming when I first got in the business, and it didn't work so well for me. That's why I think it's important that you have to be specific on what kind of a market you're doing it in and what kind of an area you're looking for. It has to resonate with you.
Mhm.
I was in West Van at the time, and it just, I mean, I did it, but I wasn't consistent, and that was probably the biggest problem. I've been farming downtown, mostly downtown now, for about 7 or 8 years, and it works very well, but again, it has to be consistent.
Okay, so consistency is key.
Right.
Okay, awesome. Brian?
Hi, I've been farming West Side detached homes, Kerrisdale, Dunbar, Mackenzie Heights, Wilchina, for 30 plus years. I got into it, I was 21 when I started, and I was with Canada Trust Realtor. I sold a house in the neighborhood, and they let me print up these things that stamped an impressed address on at the time. And I just went around the neighborhood delivering these things, and I got another listing, did another ink press, got another listing, and just kept it rolling. And I would say if you're gonna farm, you have to be committed to being consistent, like they've said. Consistent and persistent is the two qualities of geographic farming. And you have to know as much as somebody who lives in that area. So if you're not willing to commit to that, don't geographically farm, because if they know more than you do, then they're not going to consider you an expert in that area.
That's awesome. So we're hearing some words repeated. Consistency, persistence, commitment. So here's what everybody wants to know. What were the numbers you looked at, or what were the questions that you had to answer to determine where to farm, how big of an area to farm? Because that's what we often get asked. Okay, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna farm. Okay, now what? So how do you figure out whether it's a good farm or not?
Well, back then I had no idea, so I just farmed the area that I was living in at the time. But now I know the numbers of the area. I just farm a very small area of 1,500 houses, but I do it by hand because over the years when I've gotten lazy and started to mail it out, my market share would drop. So every time I go, when I leave here today, I'm driving out to Ladner to drop off 200 newsletters, and I'll bump into, on a nice day, I'll bump into 9 or 10 people that all know who I am, and I'll have a non-threatening conversation about real estate with them. But I know there's 65 houses over the last 30 years, on average, sell in this area, and my goal is to get half that market share. So you need to know your numbers. You need to pick an area. How are you going to do it? Are you going to mail it? Are you going to do it by hand? How are you going to, you need to choose that. Then you've got to make sure you figure out the turnover rate. The turnover rate in the area I do is about 4 to 5% every year. So 1 out of every 20 or 25 houses sell. So if I can get 20 to 25 out of, or I should say 30 out of there, that's my goal every year.
Can we elaborate on one point there? Turnover rate. How do you calculate turnover rate?
Just 30 years divided by how many, you can pull it up on the MLS, just go into any area, pull up how many houses have sold there. I think the stats go back to 1990. So over 30 years, if you just divide 30 by 1,800 houses that have sold, and there's your 60 every year.
Awesome.
So I'm a little bit different from these guys because I'm focusing more on the condo market and the condo market downtown. So when I'm farming an area, each community that I'm going after is actually a particular building. So right now I think we've got 19 or 20 buildings that I've farmed to. And so I'm sending out somewhere between 4,500 to 5,000 pieces a month, every single month. And it's a type of a newsletter. And the way that that I've continued to increase the business or my investment in the business is to pick communities, so whether it's your neighborhood, et cetera, that you want to be in, and find out what the turnover is. So I would look at the last 12 months, because I want to be very specific about it. What sold in the last 12 months? Were there enough sales in that building? Am I echoing?
That's fine.
It's okay. Have there been any sales? Have there been a lot of sales, or have there not been very many at all? Is there a dominant agent that's taking over that area, that's been in that area for a long time? And somebody once said to me a long time ago, there's no point pushing string up a hill. So if that particular area doesn't work for you, there's a lot of other areas to go for. So don't get hooked on just, I have to have this particular area. Find something else that works for you, and then become specific about it. Have a look at what's available and what you need to know about it.
Awesome. So I heard 1,500 was something, does that mean, what you said, like 1,500? Turnover rate has come up in terms of a criteria. And you don't, if there's a dominant agent, don't try to push string up a hill.
You can go later and do it, but I think if you're trying to get in, if you're just getting into farming, you want something that's going to put some money back in your jeans.
Yeah.
With some sense of, not urgency, but something sooner than later.
Yeah.
And you can always go back and challenge that agent later.
Yeah. Okay. What criteria did you use to pick a farm?
I just kind of lucked into it, to be honest. I have, over the years, changed things differently, but I would say if I were to go back and look at why I would pick an area, I would pick an area that you can continue to have knowledge in, that you can continue to, that you like, and you like the people in, and you're like-minded. Also, when you start to farm, you should be ready to have some money set aside to continue it consistently, because if you break the consistency, you've lost months off of your program. Like literally, you stop for a couple months, you might as well start again. It's that much consistency needed. So I would say, if you're going to pick an area that you like and that you have an interest in, maybe an area you live in, like Jamie did. And I would just be prepared to be consistent with your program. And actually every year I set up a program, so I know what I'm going into ahead of time. And something different I do is, like, when the market's really good, I pre-print a lot of material, so I'm paying for material when I have lots of money, because I know that if times come like now or other times where it's a little thinner, I want to have all that prepaid for stuff that I can fall back on and easily get out there for a pretty reasonable number. And that way I know I can keep consistent with my mail and programs. So.
Could you elaborate a little more on the budget number or the money number? Do you have a sense or recommendation in terms of the minimum amount people should think about spending?
I think you work within your comfort zone. I mean, my area has started smaller and then grown. I'm probably 10,000 homes consistently right now. But I don't recommend that for starting out. I think that's way too big. I would start with, maybe 1,500 to 2,000 like Jamie's doing, and really get known there, really have a real consistent program. One thing I'll add to this whole thing is when I was younger, I watched a program put on by Hobbs Herder, which is a marketing farming group. Excellent program. And I always, whenever I'm worried about my farming activity, I always think of this program from Hobbs Herder. It's called 8 in 8. And what you do is, I do 8 mailers in 8 weeks. I just boom, boom, boom. And it's a big commitment. Like, now to mail 10,000 homes is over $1,000. The mailers are over 1,000, so it's $2,000 a week to commit to that program. And then my program has always been about, we have the expression when you're new, fake it till you make it. Build perception in the farm. I think, am I getting off straight from
No,
my
it's good.
Sorry if I'm getting off. I love to farm, so
Passion, that's another word we were taking away from you, passion.
If you build a perception of what you want to be in that area. So if you're going to do a mailer card or you're going to do social media, you can do it any way you want. I find social media is very confusing for many people, but because they don't have a consistent program. They're not putting the same message out, and the message they're putting out, it confuses the public. So you have to have a clear path when you begin, and when you begin, you want to have a perception of what it is you want that farm to deem you as. Like, you're not going to put a big number 1 on your card. I'm number 1. That's what I want everybody to think I am. So you consider what your group or what your farm area wants, and then you create the perception on whatever you send out to them, what you want to be to them. Okay, and never do one-sided mailers. It's a waste of money. You always do the backside too. And I've always had a habit of, I do perception and then I do result. Perception, result, perception, result. If I don't have a result, I take neighborhood results or results in that farm area and I put those on the back or whatever. And that's just for mailers. And then if you're going to do social media, make sure you stick to what you want to be perceived at. Don't get into this other area. People are like ADD with social media. It's here, it's there, oh, it's over here. Stick to what you want the people to know you as, what your perception is.
Yeah,
And
that's a really, really important message, because what you put out there is what you attract. So think about how you want to be known in that farm. I like that. Really good point. Really good point.
I'll stop while I'm ahead.
Okay, so something that also always comes up is, flyers, I get that, but what else can I do to be known as the local market expert, and what can I do that doesn't cost me money? It can cost me my time, but not money.
Well, I mean, one of the things when Brian was saying earlier, I mean, I've seen people and I've seen marketing people when they're trying to sell you to get going. If you don't have the money to do it, and we did it a few times early on, it was just a bit of a pain in the butt. If you can sell the backside of it, and we actually turned it into a profit center. So sell it to someone else on the backside and have yourself on the front side. But what was the question again?
Just we think of flyers, we think of farming,
Right.
we think of flyers,
Right.
but there's lots of other things we could do
Right.
to become the expert, and in particular, things that don't cost money.
Well, I mean, when I got into it, that was the cheapest thing you could do. I don't know what I paid for a black and white photocopy. It was about 10 cents for 1,500 flyers, so it cost me $1,500. And then as I became more successful and could afford more, I did other things. But what I like to show them is evidence of success. And at the beginning, what I did was I used other people's listings. We've just sold 4 more houses in your neighborhood. We is Remax Crest. So that's how I gained credibility in the neighborhood with everything. Is I put we just sold, and then over time it became I just sold, more properties in the area. So that's a way to keep your costs down at the beginning. If that is the question, and I'm answering it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And what you're also doing with that strategy too is you're becoming really knowledgeable about the numbers in the market. So even if you weren't the listing agent, on that property, you still know what it's listed for, what it's sold for, the whole
Absolutely.
story.
Yeah, and again, what I'm after too when I'm doing it is, I'm after their email addresses. Get the value of your home emailed to you instantly. They get 2 touches through snail mail from me, or snail mail, or I hand deliver it depending on the time of the year and the rain. But also, if I've got their email address, I do YouTube videos and just listed, just sold, so they'll get about another 5 or 6 emails from me every month. All of a sudden, they're hearing from me 10 times every month to get. I've got, out of 1,500 homes, I've got 400 email addresses, so.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it's wide, sort of.
Do they ever complain they're getting too much?
Some, but not much. They wouldn't respond in the first place. And some people, after they get the information, they know, this isn't what I want, but.
If they're complaining, they're noticing your flyers.
Exactly.
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it, but I would say 1% may complain.
And how often do you send the email, Jamie?
I send 3 YouTube videos that I do for other things, and then whenever I list or sell something in the neighborhood, I send out a just listed and just sold.
Okay. Liz, what do you do that doesn't cost money?
Okay, let's just be real, everything costs money. You're in the wrong business if you're not gonna spend any money. And I think if you're gonna be doing geographic farming, you have to know you must have a budget. You have to invest in yourself, which is in your business. And if you don't wanna be spending money, you should be working with buyers, because that doesn't cost you anything. But what will not cost you anything, and to be the market expert, is your time, actual time. So do your research. Research. People love it when you start quoting numbers. They get bored, but it makes you sound like you know what you're talking about. And I would say that's really the only thing that I can think on, apart from getting in front of people, going to events that they might be going to by chance. Being in the area when people are doing their activities, that sort of thing, so they get to know your face to that area, you can do that. But in general, I think, I was going to say you could work open houses, but open houses, I think, are for buyers. They're not for the seller. I've always said that you work an open house to take on more business, which is mostly buyers. Maybe you've got a few sellers that are checking it out, but
But visiting open houses are super important.
Sure.
Because then when you go to do that listing presentation, if you haven't been the listing agent of the one that sold down the street last month, at least if you visited it, you know what it's like.
so that's your research. So again, your research is your time, and your time is valuable, so it's not free, but you have to spend it wisely.
Ryan, anything you do that doesn't cost money?
I don't know. I would say pick up the telephone. That's the easiest way, and forget about this do not call list crap.
Right.
Honest to God, just forget about it. Like, just put it. If they say something and they get all obstinate, just hang up.
Same with
Because they know who you are. You've been mailing it to them for years. You're sending it out there. They know who you are. And if they have a problem, they're gonna let you know. So I would just say forget about it. Just go through the people and work through it. That's a bunch of crap, all that stuff. And then I would say once you've done the telephone thing, maybe some of you could use I use a program called Canva. I love it. You could print up some cheap brochures. If you get in the building, if you're doing a building, sneak in there and drop a few Canva brochures in there, or whatever you can do, or you go through the neighborhood, just pick a few doors every day and just knock on them. Knock costs money.
Well, your time, right? But I love the suggestions you have made about going to events, shopping the local businesses, wearing your brand, walking up and down the streets of your farm. I love the fact that you're delivering the flyers, because then you're having these conversations.
I never knock on their door and I never pitch them. I've never asked anyone to list their house once.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to do this when they see me walking towards them. So it's my way. I hate open houses,
So that's my way of doing an open house.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it to the same 1,500 people.
Mhm.
And there's still 400 people that have not moved in the 25 years I've been in the business.
Yes, yes, yes.
One guy invited, the day it was 30 degrees last week, I made the mistake of wearing black Levi's and a navy blue shirt and black street shoes. I was dying out there, and this guy invited me in for a beer, and I'd never taken booze. I said, absolutely.
Awesome.
So are you telling me that you deliver to 1,500 homes, but you never knock on the door, you just slide it
I
through their
did.
mailbox?
So the guy that told me how to do these things, he said, knock on their door 3 times, once, and say hi. Never pitch them. I just said hi, and I just gotten out of the restaurant business where we owned a bunch of restaurants, and now this guy's telling me to be a door-to-door salesman knocking on doors. I wasn't very excited about that, but I needed to succeed, so I knocked on their door, and he said, once you've seen him 3 times, never knock on their door again, and I haven't since. But this time of year is why I like to do it, because it's sunny out. Everybody's out in their yard doing something. They know who I am. And like I say, I'll see 10 people out there today. And if I do that 3 days a week, I'm going to see, that's 1,500 people a year. That means I'm going to see them once a year, hopefully. So. No, surprisingly, the question from Brian was, in his eloquent way of putting things, are there any tree huggers that protest all the paper I use? Where's Louise Boutine? She's the only one. But no, I haven't had any problem with the tree huggers. And Delta, which is where Ladner is the home of the tree hugger.
So what questions do you want to ask these rock stars that they haven't already answered?
Do you
Casey,
guys do,
can you stand up?
What was your name?
Do you guys do address reservations?
So the question is, do you do addressed or unaddressed?
I do both.
I've done it both ways. Depends if I'm putting it in the mail or whatever. But at first, back in the day, when we could get their names off the tax roll, I typed all 1,500 names into my database. And I used to the other thing I like about hand delivering it is I stick it in their door so they can't miss it. Whereas I know when I go home and I go through my mailbox, I'm just rifling through all the junk. This way they can't miss it. So that's the other benefit to delivering it by hand.
Liz, what were you gonna add?
I'm just gonna say, everybody has their own style of doing things, and I've been doing this for a while, and I'm using a really high quality product. And consistently, every single month, this product is going out. And I actually get calls from homeowners saying, we're not ready to list, but when we do, we're only gonna call you. You're always here. We're always getting your product. We love the mail outs that you're sending because of the quality, and that's the kind of quality that we would like when we're ready to sell, so that your brochures are going to look like that, etc. So I think those are just, you have to know your market though. I went for a while and I was tree hugging because we didn't do any brochures, even in Sweet, we did not do any brochures. We'd send you links, and you just have to know that depending on where you are, it wasn't working for us. We had to put out proper quality brochures, advertising, etc.
Quality is definitely something that's important. I'll never forget a couple of years ago at my house in Kitts, I got a flyer in the mail from an agent. It was a letter, and it said, "Dear Homer Owner." I can't make this stuff up. So proof your work. Homer Owner. It wasn't for Brian.
I'll go back to my Hobbs herder thing. Some of you think that mailers are antiquated. I'll tell you right now that mailers for me are the highest producing item that I send out. They make me more money than any social media, and I've done probably, 6 or 7 lead generation type social media guys, and certain things, those are for different people, let's just say. It's not gonna work as well as you put your stuff out there every week for 8 weeks in front of people. Bob's Herder did the thing. They did a survey before they started the program. They found the top realtors were spread between about 3 realtors in the area, after the 8-week program, and they, keep in mind, they used a fictitious realtor, doesn't exist, didn't have any signs up, didn't have anything. Fictitious person. They did it for 8 weeks, they did the survey on the same area, guess who the #1 realtor was? Mr. Fictitious.
That's awesome.
So, you know, if you think it doesn't work, I challenge you to try it, because you'll be surprised. And anytime my business slows down, back to the 8 me, all the time. It's just an instant pickup. The phone rings, you're not having to track people down, they're calling you, they're ready to go, it's all good.
Do you have a reference, like a link that you could share with us, put on the Facebook group?
I don't know if even Hobbs Herders in business anymore, I'm not sure, hobbsherder.com.
Did anybody look it up and find it? Okay, could someone post that on the Facebook group? Could you talk to somebody who's part of our wonderful Facebook group and share it? I also put up last week, there's a podcast that I'm a big fan of called Kingston Lane, and there were 2 podcasts done on farming, and they're really well done. It's very similar to just talking to these guys. It's very much like this, an interview, so it's great.
Also, community events, you can get in for pretty cheap into some of these things. They're desperate for sponsors. So you could sponsor a T-ball team for, I don't know, $150 or something. Your name is on that little T-ball team in that neighborhood or whatever. There's lots of little things you can do. Schools are good if you can get in with a few of the chatty ladies in the school or whatever that want you to sponsor something. It's very low dollars. It's pretty good exposure to the families in the area. You know, just kind of know your demographics. I think that's a big one, and then you know who you're dealing with. If they're single people, obviously schools aren't going to help you a lot. But, you know who you're dealing with and go from there.
I was at a course at the Real Estate Board last week, and they were giving us some pretty interesting numbers. Starting as of June 1st this year, we have 14,000 realtors. And as June 1st this year, 10,000 realtors had not done one deal. Yeah, not one deal.
Medallion Club was 13.5 deals last year.
Right. Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
So, and that is a 60% increase from last year. Increase on the number of agents not doing deals. So
Wow.
The average is typically 6,000 agents a year that don't do a deal out of 14,000. And this year they're already at 10,000. My
Wow.
point on that is that this is such a great group. We have a really great support around us. You need to lean on your office and your people that are going to help you through it. And one of the things that I did last year, because we've all been in this business for a long time, we know that this kind of a market is not for the faint of heart. And a lot of people will fade into the background where we're going, ooh, good. That's, get rid of cull the herd. And, but because of that, I want my business to grow. So we made a decision in November last year to grow our marketing budget by 30%. Because we're going to take over where people are dropping out. And I think you have to have the faith in yourself that you're going to be in this for the long haul and put some money into yourself, even if it's hard. Find a way to invest in yourself, because you really, this is where the rubber hits the road. You have to do your business like a business now. And you can't just sit there and wait for the phone to ring or the email to come in. So you have to put yourself in front of people somehow. And geographic farming is the easiest way to do it. Consistently.
Has this been helpful?
Sure.
Yes.
Awesome. We have one last question at the back. Oh, we have 2 last questions. Both of you keep standing, because then we'll take those 2 and then we'll get to the next.
Have you guys had to make any adjustments in the frequency of your clubs due to some recent negatives, like the same plan 6 months out of the year?
No, I don't think you do. I mean, I didn't get any response the first 18 months. So it took me 18 months to get a deal, and it was like a dagger going through my heart every time I saw someone's sign going on. But most people with geographic farming give up way too soon. You've got to keep going and going through it. And what Liz just said here is really important. I know two real life examples of people. This is the time, if you've got it, to be spending more money, because this market's going to turn, and you want to be the one standing there on top of the hill when the market turns. And that's one of the reasons I'm back out there like this, because who knows when it's going to be, but when it does, I want to be that guy there. So as for frequency, I consistently just wanted them to get 30 hits from me per year through snail mail.
Last question.
Can't
We
hear
can hear you.
I think in condos, if you're not using a company to help you, I use Real Marketing. Everybody knows I use Real Marketing. I'm a big fan of them. But if you're not using them, I believe Canada Post makes you buy postal codes, a walk. And so that's the best way to do it. You just have to figure it out and you know how you're going to go about doing that. In the past, a long time ago, what we used to do is we do like Brian, we would have all of our things printed in advance, and then you would kind of send them out in elastic bulks. You'd take them down to the post office and do that every week or every 2 weeks. But you know, we just figured out a way that keeps it simple for us, and so that I don't have an excuse to miss it. And so we do it every single month. It happens. MJ is my rock star over here that just keeps everything on track. Whether I want to do it or not, it's done.
Awesome. You guys were awesome. Is everyone inspired to farm now?